بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm your host Shabbir Hassan. Welcome back to another episode of the IlmFeed podcast. We're good to go, inshallah. We hope you're having a good day. And today's one, I've got a feeling, is going to be really good, inshallah. We've got a brother with us with a very interesting background, really cool stories to share. But this one is for those of you, especially who are trying to balance things, you want to get things done. You're busy, and look, everyone's busy. Like, we know everyone's busy. You might be a student, you might be a family man or woman, or you might even have your own business. You might just be working a 9 to 5, whatever it is. Everyone's busy. Everyone's got things to do. Everyone's got commitments. But I think the interesting thing with, inshallah, this episode is going to be, how we can make use of our time, how we can be a bit more productive, how we can balance things like, family, things like our deen, our lifestyles, etc., and how we can maybe even further ourselves, how we can develop ourselves into becoming more productive and better at the things that we do. So I'm looking forward to this one, inshallah, and it gives me a great pleasure to introduce a brother who, mashallah, is a PhD candidate. So we're talking academic here, right? So I'm feeling a bit, underwhelmed with the Nah, alhamdulillah. But yes, let's introduce our guest for today, brother Salah. Sharief, assalamu
Wa alaikum
alaikum.
assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you
Jazakallah
so
khair.
much.
No,
Thank
jazakallah
you so
khair
much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. It's my honor.
And how are you doing?
Alhamdulillah.
I know you've come all the way from
Barakallah
from
feek.
Manchester.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. It's
Yeah.
worth it, inshallah.
Inshallah,
Anything
inshallah.
for IlmFeed.
Alhamdulillah. So is it Manchester United or Manchester City then?
Do you know what? Quite ironically, it's Liverpool.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was influenced. I was influenced from a young age,
Yeah.
and I've drawn the dark side. So
Wow.
that's why I have to live
It's not
with.
because of Mo Salah, is it?
Well, no, actually, it's funny because growing up,
Yeah.
I was a really avid fan, really hardcore, like in school, high school, and then
Of who,
as
sorry? Of Liverpool?
Liverpool,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I used to watch every game, just really be into it.
Yeah.
And as I got into uni, things got busy, and it kind of fell off playing football and watching football. So as I got to the last couple of years,
Yeah.
I'm not as interested as I was. And then now, like, the best player in the league is called Mohamed Salah, and my
Nah.
name is Salah, and it's like such wrong timing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I could have had Salah. I could have,
You could have had
if
it,
only
man.
this happened 5 years ago, it would have been perfect. I
It
would
would
have
have
just been the talk of the town. But alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. The thing is, man, because you support Liverpool, I don't know, man. I think now
I should have
It's
mentioned
like-
that, isn't it? Yeah.
you shouldn't have, because you're going to talk about productivity, and I don't think it's productive to be a Liverpool fan. So
Khair, inshallah. We could say this is ikhtilaf.
Ikhtilaf, yeah, that's it, man. Alhamdulillah. No, honestly, thank you for your time.
Jazakallah khair.
I know we're going to be speaking about busy schedules anyway. I know you're a very busy person, and in fact, it's interesting because you're a PhD candidate. Alhamdulillah, you went down the route of going to university, doing a master's, and then and now, alhamdulillah, you're at the University of Leeds, studying law. But here's the thing. I mean, but you're here to also, you're not here for university. You've come to London also to study the deen. So I know you've been studying with Sheikh Akram Nadwi for quite some time now. But that's a really interesting mix, which I don't feel like we see enough of, maybe. Like people going to uni and focusing on their studies and their careers, but also studying on the side, the deen as well. So you've even in between, you've traveled to Egypt as well to study the Arabic language, and you're studying this. So tell us a bit about why you do that. Because you could just stick to your PhD and you can just have a nice, successful career. But why do you also study the deen on the side?
Well, you mentioned in the introduction balancing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll go ahead and just address that immediately, because you mentioned Shaykh Akram Nadwi hafizahullah. He taught us that there's actually no such thing as balance. There's no such thing as balancing two unequal objects.
Okay.
Inherently, if two things are unequal, they're not going to balance. One's going to outweigh the other. So as for dunya and akhirah or there's no such thing as balancing two things that are not equal. Rather, we prioritize.
Okay.
So you
interesting.
prioritize one over the other,
Mm.
right? And so, obviously, when speaking to the people, everyone's different. Not everyone needs to be a scholar. Not
Yeah,
everyone needs to be a teacher. Everyone, you could be a working man. You can be an intellectual. You could be anything.
Mm.
So, what I would say then, people need to then reapply to themselves. But for myself, my foremost passion is seeking knowledge, talab al-ilm,
Yeah.
Islamic knowledge, and just getting closer to Allah through studying His religion and understanding what He wants from us. That perspective, and so if we want to prioritize, then you need to then reevaluate. You need to say, okay, what's important to me? What's my passions? Basically, what do I want to get from life? Not just a simple answer, Jannah. Okay, but how do you want to get Jannah? Like, what's the important thing to you from a dunya perspective? What do I want to achieve from this life? And then you put that at the front. You put that first. Then anything behind that almost is a facilitative thing. So anything that comes second or third is facilitating that. So for me, like I said, studying Islamic studies, that's the number one for me. That's important to me. That's what I enjoy. That's what I have a passion for. But at the end of the day, you've got to feed your family once you get one. You've got to have sustenance. So we're pragmatists as well. We can't just go and study. Well, how are you going to eat? How are you going to drink? Right? So you need to balance those things. And so for me, everything else that comes after it, whether it's academia, whether it's business, they're all facilitative of that. So for me, I accept the fact that some portion of my time has to be towards the dunya. You need to get married. You need to have kids. You need to sustain yourself. Now, then I really thought, well, which careers are most facilitative of seeking knowledge? And so my answer was, well, academia. Although academia is very hard work, and nobody should go into academia to have, like, to be laid back and to get as if it's any easier than a 9 to 5. However, there's much more flexibility. So with academia, PhD for example, I have a meeting once a month.
Right.
Other than that,
you're just doing.
It's my time. I need to research. Right. So I go to the University of Leeds, but actually I live in Manchester.
Right.
I go down once a month. Obviously that's very difficult because you can hibernate for a month and no one knows where you are. So you need to be self-motivated. But that being said, like today, I managed to come here. Although it might be a Saturday, even if this was a Thursday, I would have still come. It's no problem to me, right? So I can then reorganize my time how I wish. And so this is very useful for a student of knowledge. If there's a scholar who says, I can only teach you at 3 p.m, well, you say, no problem, I'll come to you at 3 p.m. That just means I need to do my research at 6 a.m. Or 6 p.m, before or after. Whereas if you're stuck to 9 to 5, and of course, no disrespect to 9 to 5, they can do things in a different way. But if I'm stuck to 9 to 5, then it kind of limits my options to study. So then and then the second thing with academia is I almost see academia as like it is ilm. It's not sacred knowledge, but it's still knowledge. It's almost like secular. It's like it is secular knowledge, right? So for me, that feeling of reading and learning, I enjoy this much more than normal work. 9 to 5, where you're putting an output. Like I did a law degree. If I was a lawyer, you could earn much more money, but you're doing a service. Whereas as a professor, as a lecturer, as a researcher, even if you're 50 years old, you're reading something that you didn't know yesterday. So it's still like learning. So although it's hard work and at times it sucks the life out of you, but it's still, for me, it's more akin to learning than it is to working. For that's why I went into academia, really deep down as a facilitation to that. But also secondarily because I enjoy it. I don't buy this idea that for what 70% of our lives we're going to do something that we don't enjoy, so we can, especially in this country where the working hours are so long, only to then enjoy what you come home at 7 o'clock, 6 or 7 o'clock, then you've got 8, 9, 10, 11, now you have to go to sleep. So you've got 4 hours in a day. So I'm really not, I couldn't tolerate a lifestyle where I'm doing something for most of the day that I'm not enjoying, to enjoy those 4 hours in a day or live for the weekend. I'd rather do something that I'm actually enjoying during the day. So that was my intention behind academia, and the same for business.
I mean, because the thing is, nowadays people are talking a lot about breaking out of this 9 to 5, like system we could call it. And there's a lot of talk even online, like people are talking about this, it's almost like robotic, you could say. Like we said, we're not disrespecting anyone in that, that has the 9 to 5 lifestyle, but it's almost robotic, and a lot of people that have gone into this career and this lifestyle, a lot of them, they say themselves, we're not really enjoying it.
It's a bit monotonous.
And commuting every morning, just coming back in the evening and not having much time. So is it a bad thing? Is it a bad thing to be in this 9 to 5? And some people might argue, well, at least I have a timetable, it's not like every day I wake up and I don't know what I'm going to do. I know I'm doing something, there's a timetable, and if I want to do something else, I could either wake up earlier and do it, or when I come back, make use of the hours I have. So what do you think about this?
That's a very good question, because actually entrepreneurship or business is very much like marriage from the perspective, and that was a buzzword so that the youngsters can wake up.
Yeah.
Marriage. Yeah, this podcast is gonna be about marriage.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is very much like marriage in the sense that it's been romanticized by a few people, and so both of those things are excellent. Both of those things are sunnah. Both of those things are rewardable.
Yeah.
However, when you're doing either of those things, you need to be informed. It's just like, you get a 16-year-old saying, "Oh, I want to get married, and after the prayer, I want to do tasbih on my wife's fingers, and my wife's, my husband's gonna wake me up for Fajr."
Yeah.
You didn't wake up for Fajr for 15 years. Your mum didn't wake you up.
Exactly.
You think your husband's gonna wake you up? Yeah. So this romanticized idea, then once they get married, they're like, "This is not what I signed up for."
Yeah.
Same thing with business. We see these days. It becomes very fashionable to be an entrepreneur, right? You get these memes and I make money in my sleep and all of this, None of that is accurate. And like you say, it portrays the standard working man in a negative light, which is not true, and that's not fair. Entrepreneurship has its has its ups and downs, and it's not for everyone.
Yeah, true.
For example, being a business person, I can come to this podcast because my time is my own.
Yeah.
That being said, on the way here, I was dealing with a client, and on the way back, I'm going to be dealing with a client. And there's so many stories. Like, I'm in Saudi on a motorway at 1 a.m. Going like 90 miles per hour as a passenger, on the phone to a client who thinks I'm in an office with a suit and tie and I'm sealing off a deal. Most people don't want that. Right, so I have like two phones. I have like a personal phone and a business phone, and that business phone's never off. And so if someone calls me at 6 a.m. or someone calls me at 11 p.m., I'm gonna have to answer that. I'm gonna have to put my work for. And in fact, it was New Year's Day, and I forgot it was New Year's Day, and I was in my office and I was doing work, and so I called up someone, like a business call, and then they were very startled, and I was like, "Where did you get my number?" I was like, "Well, I got it from your website. I was inquiring about this service." And she said, "Well, I wasn't expecting a business call on New Year's Day." So I was like, "Oh, sorry, I'll call you tomorrow." I didn't even know it was New Year. There's no boundaries. Like, I'm just doing my thing.
Yeah.
Most people don't want that. They want their holidays. They want their evenings and weekends. So it's not the case at all. It depends on your lifestyle. So if you are committed, if you are self-motivated, and you want to break out of that 9 to 5, then be my guest. By all means, go ahead and do it. It's not what it's made out to be, and 9 to 5 is not inherently wrong. Rather, it's that person who's doing 9 to 5, is he, like you said, is he making the most of his time outside of it? During that 9 to 5, is he really discontent with his life? Not everyone is.
Yeah.
So long story short, not necessarily. Whether you do 9 to 5 or whether you're an entrepreneur, it really, the onus is on you to make the most of your time.
I
and
mean,
some people, they're doing 9 to 5 and they're actually enjoying their job, and kudos,
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to entrepreneurship, for example, alhamdulillah, it's a good thing that a lot of Muslims, they're now exploring that avenue. But when it comes to like being a student, for example, like yourself as a student, even in the last few years, you actually went into your own startup kind of thing, right? And you explored that option. So is that possible? Like, can you be a student, and would you actually advise and encourage young Muslim students to also explore that? I know it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone, but like, is that also a good thing? Because my personal observation is that you can't always rely on people, right? You can't always rely on getting a job, or some students in the summer, they have a job, right? And then that's it. By the time the summer comes to an end, the holiday. But at least with a business, like, that's your work, and you see the fruits of it, and you're putting in that effort, and you're getting the money in, which can be a long-term thing as well, even after you finish studying. So what would your is that something basically you encourage other students to do?
with the caveat that we said that it's not necessarily for everyone, and you need to know what you're getting yourself into. With that being said, absolutely is good. Absolutely is very much encouraged, because it's that independence, it's that financial independence. So when people are studying, especially with, like, if someone wants to be a student of knowledge or anything like that, and if they want to start doing it full time, or if they want to really dedicate themselves to it, then you got to answer the question of, okay, well, where's my sustenance going to come from? Either your family can support you, which I guess most people's family can't. Or you can rely on sponsorships and handouts,
Yeah.
or you'll be financially stable and financially independent. And so as for the first thing, well then, if you can, then alhamdulillah, there's a big ni'mah, there's a big blessing.
Yeah.
But most people are not in that position.
Mm.
The second thing is a possibility, but now you're tied down to other people. Even if they say no strings attached, there's always strings.
There's nothing free, basically.
Yeah, and also, you know, you're respecting the community. People know, like, you're getting handouts. Or why should I listen to you if, you know, you're not even making a living for yourself? They're not you know, you're respecting the community goes down. And really all that leaves you with is number 3, which is to be financially independent for that reason. So that's the great thing about business. If you're able to reach that stage, that you are financially independent, you don't need to rely on anyone else. And like we say, you know, Muslims now, they're very much reliant and attached to whether it's an organization or a company, and you know, so having those networks of financial independence, that's an excellent thing. But as we said, and we keep saying, is you need to know what you're getting yourself into, because it's not free money. Actually, you're working harder than 9 to 5 most of the time until you reach that stage.
Yeah.
You know?
And I know you mentioned at the beginning as well, like you had the marriage and the whole business thing, and you said both of them are urud, both of them are sunnah.
Yeah.
And actually, that's a really valid point, because the Prophet ﷺ, he was also involved in business.
Yeah.
As we know, even before marriage, before prophethood, you know, with Khadija radiallahu anha. And it reminds me of a hadith along the wordings of, you know, like the best sort of like provision and sustenance is the one from your own hand, you know, like the work that you put in, like Dawood alayhi salam, you know, he was known to like be able to mold things, you know, with his own hand. So that's quite important, because it's in our deen, you know, like the fact that you're able to work and to earn your own livelihood, and like we said, to become independent, financially independent, and not to rely on other people. I think there's a dua as well, like that's quite similar to this wording, that you know, you're asking Allah for pure rizq, and some people say that that's also, what that also means is basically not relying on other people, you know, becoming self-sufficient. So this is quite interesting as well. It's in the deen.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the deen very much encourages prestige. Also, like we get this impression being financially well off is a negative thing, and then we equate zuhud to be an ascetic to, you know, being poor, and this is very much not the case. So the Prophet ﷺ, he wrote, like, when we say like, oh, what did the Prophet ﷺ wear, and then we wear you know, a thobe or a shalwar khamis or something like this. Well, actually, more accurately to say, the sunnah of a garment is to wear what's prestigious in that society. Because actually, you know, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, from afar she saw Abu Jahl, one of the most hated of creation, and the Prophet ﷺ. She couldn't distinguish the two. From the back, she couldn't distinguish who was who. She had to go around and see. They were wearing the same thing, because they were both very prestigious people within that society, right? And Abu Jahl actually was called Abu al-Hakam. Abu al-Hakam, the father of wisdom. He used to be that prestigious. And of course, the Prophet ﷺ renamed him Abu Jahl, because the true wisdom is to, you know, acknowledge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But back to the point is that the sunnah is to encourage prestige. So being financially independent and being well off, this is an encourageable thing, because then with that, now you have power within the society to influence.
Exactly.
So the people of influence are the people who are presentable, who look good, people who speak well, people who can do change financially, morally, all of these things, intellectually, right? So back to your original question, you know, why do you know try to excel and do your best in the dunyawi aspect as well as the religious aspect? Unfortunately, these days, seeking Islamic knowledge is almost reserved for people who have failed at everything else. Especially in the East, unfortunately, and we're seeing it sometimes in the West as well with madrasas and things like this. So actually, it's a very common thing in the Arab countries, is that you'll take the exam for medicine, and if you fail, then you're engineering, and if you fail, you do anything else, and if you fail that too, then
you'll just get pushed into the madrasa, basically.
Then you'll just do the Islamic studies.
So
even at major institutions in the East, actually, some of the students have no interest in religiosity, but now they're studying this. Why? Because they had no other option. So they need, you know, they need to study something, and so now it's like not the creme de la creme. It's the opposite. It's like it's the worst of the worst now. So the standard is lowering itself,
And
right?
long term,
No,
what
it
we
has,
see,
it has a huge impact.
yeah, because then the
standard of
scholars that
scholarship.
we're relying on,
No,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
So when we think of the scholars of the past, Shaykh
Yeah.
al-Islam, Ibn Taymiyyah, these people they didn't just choose to study Islamic studies because that was the only option they had left. They could have done anything else, and they did do other things. They were doctors a lot of the times. They were tradesmen. They were engineers. They were carpenters. All of these things, but they had a passion for Islamic knowledge. So now you got the greatest minds, and so this is an important thing. Even one of the teachers in Manchester, Sheikh Kahlan, he teaches in Saudi, in Al Qura, but he teaches, as far as I'm aware, engineering.
Yeah.
Then he may teach Islamic studies in his own time, but he's a professor of engineering. That's his thing, right? And he's impactful and he's very intelligent, and so having the best of both worlds is very much beneficial for your Islamic studies, because, and another thing on the same topic is that excelling in these subjects and going through higher education, although it's not necessarily the only option, but going through higher education and excelling in these, whether it's in the humanities or in the sciences, is giving you tools that you can use in scholarship.
Definitely.
The critical thinking, the analysis, analytical
Research,
thinking, all of
things,
research skills, all of these things are imperative for Islamic scholarship. So having an Islamic scholar who doesn't know critical analysis, doesn't know how to write a dissertation properly, even how to cite it, all of these things, this is hugely impactful. And to be honest, we see that, although we don't want to throw mud at anyone, but sometimes we see that in some of these institutions. The approach to scholarship is very much I'm going to avoid buzzwords that, polemic words, but it's very much a following. You read a text and then you teach that text. You didn't even apply it to anything within our society.
You have to contextualize, right?
But the contextualization requires critical thinking. It requires analysis. It requires, okay, so which part of this statement was a general one and which of it was specific? But rather, if you just, you don't have any of those skills and you're just memorizing basically, well, then, we have computers. We don't need you to memorize.
So true. You know what? We're seeing the effects of that today, like especially in the West, I think, as well. With alhamdulillah, we have a lot of there's so many institutes, there's so many, that's a positive thing, positive step to see the amount of institutes out there, the madaris and everything else.
100%.
But it's not just about numbers. It's not just about number of graduates X, Y, Z every single year. It's about the quality as well, and that's one thing we're seeing. In the prestigious universities, the graduates, you'll see that they're actually later on having a positive impact in their own community and in society. But then are we seeing the same thing with Islamic scholarship? Once they graduate, is it just the fact that, because I know, personally, I know a lot of scholars who have, mashallah, they've gone through the system, they've graduated, but they're back into normal jobs.
And the thing is, even normal jobs, that's not an issue. However, I'm sure that's not what you intended when you went to study for 5 to 10 years. And in fact, you could have done this normal job without those 5 to 10 years study. So almost like you have more of a responsibility. What are you doing with your knowledge now? And we see whether it's Azhar, Al Medina, anywhere, how many graduates a year do we have from all those institutes every year?
Yeah, combined.
And where are they? This is the issue. And so when they come back, not only are they doing normal or quote unquote normal jobs, but they're doing jobs that they could have qualified for 10 years ago. And if I was to say minimum wage jobs, there is no issue with a minimum wage job and no disrespect whatsoever to a person with a minimum wage job, because if their rizq is halal, then inshallah they're on their way to Jannah. However, the thing with the minimum wage job is that you have to work so many hours in order to have the sustenance. So why did you study for 10 years full time abroad only to come back failing to reintegrate? And because now you have a family, now you have children, now you need to feed them, and now society is more expensive in the UK. Now you're gonna have to work overtime. You've got no time to teach, no time to study. In fact, you're starting to forget what you studied in the first place. And this comes back to the initial point we mentioned about having that sustenance, whether it's independence through business, or whether it's going through higher education, or whether it's learning a trade. Basically, being stable in one way, shape, or form. So definitely that's something we need to work towards.
Inshallah. I want to move away slightly from
Sure.
the, like the scholarship and everything
Mhm.
else. Let's bring it back to, let's say, the majority of the listeners and the
Yeah.
viewers who, they're students, maybe at university, college, wherever it might be, or they're working, the family people. So like I want to start it from the beginning of the day, right? Because that's like that's the key moment in the day, right? You wake up, and there's so much out there nowadays about like mornings, like
Yeah.
morning routines, etc. I'll give you an example. So you'll see a lot of videos maybe on YouTube, or you'll read articles about 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. starts, yeah, and the most successful people out there, your entrepreneurs and your Bill Gates, etc. They're waking up early and they're getting this much done, right? So I come across to that, but then at the same time I also at the same come across people that are like, no, you need your sleep, so you need your 8 hours of sleep a day, and not everyone's the same. Like Bill Gates, he's comfortable with his routine. You need to be comfortable with yours. Where is that like balance, and what's in like from the work that you've looked into and the research you've done, like what's a good morning routine?
Like most things,
Yeah.
the truth is somewhere in between, right? And there's good points to both sides.
Yeah.
On the one hand, we will definitely say that each person, is programmed independently. Each person is different, right?
Yeah.
So some people are programmed to be night owls. They work better at night, and some people are early birds.
Yeah.
However, I would venture that, especially with young people, especially with students, and that's why most of the people here, or young adults, who think that they're night owls, is because they're going to sleep at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
It's because they get 4 hours sleep. So of course, if you wake up at 6 a.m. after you went to sleep at 2 a.m., you're gonna struggle, right? Go to sleep at Beni Adam time. Go to sleep at 10, 11 o'clock for 2 weeks, and then try waking up at that time and see the difference. Then to determine, are you a night owl or not. So that's the first thing to get out of the way, is that people who think that, oh, I hate mornings, I'm not a morning person. It's almost sociable to say that. It's like, oh, I hate morning people. Well, actually, go to sleep at a reasonable time. Yeah, go to sleep before midnight, before 11 p.m.
Yeah.
every day for 2 to 3 weeks. And then see, actually, do you feel fresh at 6 or 7 o'clock or not? If you still don't, then okay, perhaps you're a night owl. But I would venture that most people, and I would be confident in saying most people, that's not the case. Actually, in the morning, they're feeling more fresh.
Yeah.
And the Prophet ﷺ, he said,
Awesome.
"Burik al-umma fi bukuriha." The blessing, the barakah of the ummah is in its early mornings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have the likes of like Abdullah ibn Umar, radiallahu anh. He would see his kids sleeping after Fajr, and he would kick them and he'd say, "Wake up, what are you doing? Like, don't you know that this is the time that Allah sends his rizq?
Yeah.
The rizq that you're going to get for the rest of the day, this is the time that it's distributed. Go after it." I'm not saying I'm perfect. Like, we go through phases where we might have lyings and we need to fix up. And that aside, I would say, with the exception of those night owls, then for sure the early mornings are where you're going to get most of your productivity. And yes, we do need our sleep, and we do need like 6 to 8 hours, as they say. Well, what's the issue with waking up at 6 o'clock? If you go to sleep at 11, that's 7 hours.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need to wake up at 4 o'clock necessarily. Basically, you just need to have some grit, some determination, and then you can tailor around your lifestyle. If you are waking up early in the morning, then the thing is, this advice, the advice is it needs to be catered towards a specific audience. So when you're speaking to students, it's going to be different to speaking to a working man working 9 to 5, or a woman, or so it's going to differ, depends. So whatever I say, the audience needs to reapply it to themselves.
Yeah.
But a student, for example, who's got some flexibility during the day, they can wake up at 6 o'clock and then they can have a nap at dhuhr time, for like half an hour. I've been having naps every day, almost every day, without fail, for at least 6-7 years.
Really?
Like every day. Like if I don't have my nap for a good 2-3 days in a row, like I feel really tired or start getting cranky.
So that's if you wake up early. And then what you manage to get a nice little afternoon siesta.
Exactly, the qaylula, the siesta. And in fact, I wake up after 20 minutes without an alarm. Like I'm just that used to it now. So midday, 11 a.m., even 1 p.m., around that time, I'll put an alarm for half an hour, almost always I wake up 5 minutes before the alarm, just because that's
Well,
what.
how do you feel after that nap though?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of research into it, so
Yeah.
I won't go into too much detail. But the audience are more than welcome to research that. You got different types of sleep. So you got like 3 stages of sleep. You've got the first stage, which is light sleep. Then you go into deep sleep, and then you go into REM, and which is like rapid eye movement. And this is where you're dreaming.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
dream sleep, and you have a cycle every hour and a half where you go through each of those, right? And so if you wake up while you're still in light sleep, then you're going to feel very refreshed. However, if you enter deep sleep and then you wake up, you're going to feel very groggy. And that's why some people, they take naps. They're like, I can't do naps. Because if you wake up after about 45, 50 minutes, you're going to feel horrible. So you need to find that sweet spot through trial and error. It's around half an hour. You sleep for about half an hour, then you're going to enter deep sleep.
Yeah.
Or an hour and a half, and that's when the cycle finishes and the new cycle starts. Now you go back to light sleep. And there are actually apps that you put it under your pillow, and through movement and through heat, it actually shows you what times you've been moving around, what times you're in light sleep. So you can actually, it depends how seriously you want to take
Track
it.
it now
Yeah.
as well,
So everyone's different. So for me, if I sleep for more than 40 minutes, I'm going to get into deep sleep. And if I wake up, then I'm going to feel groggy. So for me, I always put that alarm around half an hour. You feel very refreshed. And in fact, it's not even about the amount of time you're sleeping. It's just about rebooting.
Yeah.
Your computer's not working. What's the solution? I'll ask you now, if your computer's not working, what's the first thing that IT guy's going to tell you?
To basically try and reboot and
turn it off and on again.
Yeah, exactly.
Turn it off and on again. Yeah. That's it. You just want to turn it on, off and on again. You're feeling tired. You're feeling stressed. You just that. Sometimes, like, it might take me even 5 or 10 minutes to get to sleep. But even if I'm asleep for 2 or 3 minutes, that's fine. The fact that you're asleep, your body's rebooting. Some people, actually, I've never done this. I think it's a bit too extreme for me. They'll have a coffee nap, which is they'll drink a cup of coffee, then go to sleep. The coffee takes 7 minutes to get into your system, and that'll wake them up. I've never done that. So that's a bit hardcore. That sounds a
bit crazy.
It's a bit hardcore, yeah. But the time actually doesn't matter. The fact that you're rebooting, you're feeling refreshed. So unequivocally, I would say a half an hour nap is worth more than 2 hours at night. I would prefer to wake up at 6 and have a half an hour nap at 12 than to wake up at 8 and not nap throughout the day. So definitely to utilize that nap.
It's amazing that it's from the Sunnah, like,
Yeah.
the Qaylula is from the Sunnah. And I guess their lifestyle is different. Like in the Arabian Peninsula, it was like their day did start after Fajr.
Yeah.
And then they would sort of like have to have that midday nap.
Yeah.
And then they would continue. And it's very rich in our tradition, especially the scholarly tradition, coming back to it. Like morning times. Like you said, the Prophet ﷺ, he made dua for the ummah in that early morning time.
Yeah.
But even our scholars, like when you read their biographies and their stories, you would know like that, like you could never imagine, like you would never read a biography of a scholar that's like he carries on sleeping after Fajr and like not making use of that time. Like, even for me personally, when I was younger and I was memorizing the Quran, like the morning time was the best time for memorization. If I waited until like evening, that's like the worst possible. Your brain is clogged up by then. Nothing is going in. But in the morning, your brain's like a sponge. So if you're reading or if you're memorizing or whatever it doesn't have to be to do with studying per se. It could be anything, right? But I think that's really important. Like, again, coming back to the deen, like we spoke about business, it's deen related. We're speaking now about even just routine. Is deen related. So I guess our deen teaches us a lot that we just don't actually realize sometimes.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Do you know, although we don't need dunyawi justifications for the sunnah, the fact that the Prophet ﷺ instructed us and the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us, that's enough for us. Although when you look deep, when you look further, most of these teachings, they have dunyawi explanations to them too, and it almost always makes sense. When you wake up in the morning, firstly you're fresh, like you say, like even our subconscious, every time someone speaks to us, our brain is storing information. When you look at things, your brain is analyzing, and there's a whole lot of things going on at the same time. When you wake up in the morning, you're fresh now. It's almost like your brain is pure. It's being filled up with information throughout the whole day till you sleep, and then you're rebooting, as we said. So when you wake up in the morning, you're fresh. Secondly, the distractions. No one's going to distract you, right? when I do my Quran studies, I have a partner and we do it together. And this is what I definitely recommend to people who want to do something. Either if you're going to attend a structured class,
Yeah.
or if you can't, then get a partner and you motivate
Mm.
each other. Because, you know, although the motivation should be fi sabilillah, sometimes we need to be realistic and say,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
life gets to us and we need that push, right?
Mm.
And you need someone else waiting for you, so that if you don't do that work, the next day someone's going to be disappointed with you. Going, no, I'm gonna I can't let him down. I need to
Yeah.
be there, right? So I have a partner, and if we say, well, let's meet at 2 p.m. One day I'm gonna have a meeting. Next day he's gonna have a meeting. We're having lunch. Something's coming up. But if we say 6 a.m., who
No one's got anything on.
no one's got anything on, and people are sleeping at that time, right? And the fact that everyone, you know, there's a calmness, everyone's sleeping, your phone's not going to buzz in, you're not going to get any notifications, there's no socialization. This is a consistent time. And the Prophet ﷺ said himself, the best things are those that are consistent, even if they're small. So that's yet another benefit of having that morning thing, is that it correlates with life. And another thing is also, as human beings, this is how we've been designed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can call it a fitrah, a scientist can call it something else, but our bodies are in tune with the society around, not the society, but the world itself. For like the night and day, the sun and the moon, our bodies have a connection with these things. So even people pre-alarm clocks, pre anything, hundreds and even thousands of years ago, they would wake up in the morning and they would sleep at night. Why? Because the sun's out in the day and the moon's out at night. You know, pre-1800s, it'd be extremely unsociable, and only like menaces in society would be out at night. Before the invention of the light bulb, before we had street lamps, before electricity, to be out at night, you would have to be like I said, like a menace in society, a thug or something like this. It would be very unsociable. Your body wakes you up. The sun, the heat from the sun, wakes your body up. And when it gets cold, you want to sleep. And this is how we've been programmed. So even the cavemen, thousands of years ago, they woke up, the sun woke them up. And when the sun goes down, they go to sleep. And so our body is in tune with that. That's why I say only a few people, the exception is to be a night owl. It exists, people are like that. And you know, you can't tell someone you're not a night owl if they are. But the standard human being, how we've been designed, you wake up with the heat of the sun. And you know, your body's in its optimum design to learn in that time. And that's why the vast majority of students of knowledge who are huffaz, memorize of the Quran, they're going to tell you, I memorize of the Fajr, you know. And this is just a fact that, this is just an irrefutable fact that most people who memorize things, most people who study things, they're going to do it in the morning. Whether you want to attribute that to the Prophet ﷺ's hadith, or you want to do analysis of anthropology of human beings with the sun, however you want to go about it, this is the reality. So exactly. So if you want to be productive, then it's good to follow people before us who did tried and tested.
So once you're up, then, so we've spoken about like timing and everything. So what do you do? Because again, like people put out their own theories and their ideas. You know, you wake up, you work out, maybe you get your or some people say read a book, maybe. Of course, we know like you wake up, make dua, like pray your salah, begin with dua and prayer and things like that. But as in terms of activity, do you work out? Would you read a book? Some people say even like you're on your way to work, like listen to a podcast. It's become a trend now. IlmFeed podcast, make sure you. So like what would you recommend and what would you advise?
The advice is always comes with a caveat, which is each to their own. Everyone has their own thing, right? As for me, then the key word that I always use when it comes to productivity, when someone says, okay, well, how can I become more productive? I use like my special word is compartmentalization, which means quite simply to segment, to separate, right? To compartmentalize. Things are not mixed. Not all time is equal. This is the important thing, right? And so an hour between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. is not the same as an hour between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. And with all due respect, if you asked me, can we do this podcast at 9 a.m.? I'll say, no, sorry. Because for me, 9 a.m. is very different to 2 p.m. It's very different to 8 p.m. And like I said, people need to apply this to themselves. So for some people, 9 p.m. is the golden time of the day. Okay, fair enough. For me, that's not the case. For me, like we say, whether it's 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. Basically, between Fajr and Dhuhr, this is my golden time. Even for PhD university, 90% of anything I've ever learned or written or researched during my PhD has been before Dhuhr.
Okay.
Once it hits Dhuhr time, now my efficiency is exponentially decreasing. It's just going down. So it's almost like a race against the clock every day. What can I do during that time? Therefore, I need to reserve the most intensive things, the most demanding things, the most important things for that time. So in the morning, like you say, memorizing the Quran. If I want to memorize, I need to memorize it first thing. If I don't memorize it first thing, it's possible, but it's quite unlikely I'm going to do it later on. Whether it's because of meetings and deadlines or just because I'm too tired, it's not going to happen, right? As an exception, it'll happen, but as a routine, for me, it doesn't happen. I need to do it in the morning. When I was in university, if I'm revising for exams, if I'm writing an essay, anything that requires just pure brain power, I'm doing that in the morning. That's the first thing that I'm doing. So now when I'm doing primary research, when I'm reading an article, when I'm reading a chapter from a text, or when I'm writing, that needs to be in the morning. And so any time between Fajr and Dhuhr. And by definition, what does that mean? That means anything I don't need to use that much brain power for, I'm not going to do in the morning. And sometimes I don't follow this advice and I come to regret it. So when I find myself answering emails at 10 a.m., I always regret it. I'm like, what am I doing? I could do this at 2 p.m.
I see.
However, my research I can't do at 2 p.m, so I need to do it now. So we need to compartmentalize. The time that I spend in the morning is different to the time that I spend in the afternoon. And like I said, if someone's the opposite, that's fine. But you still need to compartmentalize the other way. So everyone needs to compartmentalize. Everyone needs to identify, firstly, which time of the day is my golden opportunity for brain power. And then place those intensive things and important things. So there's like a balance between what's the most intensive and what's the most important. And the mix between that. And usually it's almost the same. So for me, whether it's Quran or whether it's PhD research or those two things, they are the most intensive and the most important. So that needs to go in the morning. Then after that, as we say, we get to Dhuhr. Now I'm knackered. Now I'm tired. Because of all that intensive action, let me take a nap. That's like phase 1 of my day. By the way, this isn't an ideal day. Because whenever I tell people this, I don't know, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching me a lesson not to show off or, to realise that everything's from Him. Because whenever I explain this to people, then shortly after that, I don't follow my advice. I'll have a lie-in or I'll start answering emails at 9 o'clock and then I think, you need. So in an ideal day, where I'm following my own advice, this is what I would do. Then phase 2 is almost like recuperating. You'll have a nap, have some lunch, fresh air, chill for a bit. And then phase 3, back to work. But now, all those things that I postponed, whether it's answering emails, teaching, meetings, phone calls, things like this, important things you have to do, but they don't require 100% of my brain, I'll do at this time, between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m, this kind of thing. Like I say, teaching, for example. If I was to teach, although teaching is not easy, I don't need to be 100% turned on. I can start, especially if it's something I've taught before. When you're researching and when you're reading, you need to be just completely switched on. If you get distracted for a second, you've lost your trail of thought. Everything needs to be perfect. When you're teaching, you're going with the flow. I can do that at this time. So when someone says to me, "Can you teach me?" I'm like, "Okay, yeah, but at 4 p.m, yes. At 10 a.m, no." Right? I have my meetings and things like that. And then in the evening, you mentioned working out, whether it's martial arts or sport or going to the gym. Whatever the case, I'll do that in the evening. Because that doesn't require any brain power. So this is now like you're winding down from the stress of the day. I appreciate other people are different. They might need to get woken up in the morning so they go to the gym. I did try that, but for me, I feel like it's a waste of this golden opportunity, right? So if I'm spending the first hour in the gym, I could have done the gym in the evening.
So it's more about brain power rather than your actual physical,
Yeah. And like I say, everyone's different. I have a friend, who's waking up at 5:30 a.m. every day, but he'll go to the gym, and then he'll have a shower. He'll feel fresh physically, and the physical and the mental is very much connected. So he'll feel fresh and he's ready to go. And by 7 a.m. he's doing his work. So yeah, that's.
And I guess if you follow that through, what you're speaking about. So like, you're waking up in the morning, using up all your, doing all the intensive stuff. following that through with your nap in the afternoon, and then carrying on with your day, I guess naturally by 9, 10 p.m. You're gonna be shattered. You're gonna be tired.
All my
you will
friends,
wanna sleep,
yeah.
right?
My friends, they always they're not happy with me because I'm the first to leave. You know,
Yeah.
in the morning it's like, oh no, stay. If we're from socializing or we're going to dinner, it'll be like 9:30, and we're like, you know, bedtime's coming soon. You know, so absolutely you get tired, and so that's why I say people who think that they're night owls, go to sleep at a proper time, and you'll see. You know, and people who say, okay, well, I'll go to sleep at 10, but I can't go to sleep. I'm laying awake at night. Okay, for the first day, struggle. Fight, but wake up early. You might have a miserable day that day because you're just sleep deprived.
Yeah.
But like you said, by 10 o'clock you will be tired. You will want to sleep.
Yeah. Just to balance it out, though, of course, like yeah, because like you said at the beginning, romanticize the hustle, the grind, the working hard, and all of that stuff. But at the same time, like it's still important, right, to have sometimes those lions, get that rest, be sociable, go out, chill out, relax, kind of thing. Because if everyone's just like following that routine 7 days a week,
Might get
burnout, right?
Yeah.
So that's another danger, isn't it? Like that's another pitfall of burning out, and then you can't do anything in the end.
Yeah. Absolutely. So from one perspective, burning out is always bad. That's why even myself, while I've been doing this PhD, I've had to stop or postpone a couple of things that I was doing for long term, because if I'm doing everything, in the end I'm going to do none of them properly.
Yeah.
Rather, let me stop those things, let me prioritize these things. Once those finish, let me get back to that. You can't do everything, it's not going to work, right? You're going to get burnt out, as you said. And so I always say, like, even in I wrote some ebooks for advising students how to revise, and I say, look, it's not just about working hard, it's about working smart. Some people, they're in the library for like 12, 14 hours. They didn't learn anything. For 1 hour they did something. It's not about how much time you spend, it's the output, it's the productivity. So if in 4 hours you did more than what I did in 12, then, well done. That's excellent for you, and that's shameful for me. So being busy is not a praiseworthy thing. Being productive is. So when people say, oh, I'm busy, it's almost like they're patting themselves on the back that I'm so busy. Well, being busy is not a praiseworthy thing. Like, who said you're doing anything beneficial in that time where you're just constantly being busy? So definitely, going overboard will lead to burnout, and so you need to find that balance between. You need to be basically consistency. If you can pick a number of things that you're doing and you're consistent, they're gonna add up, and towards the end, you're gonna see real results. Like a person I see as a role model, Asman Qureshi from Cage. He reads like an obscene amount.
Yeah, he read like one book a day.
Right? Don't depress me. I'm doing a PhD and he's read like 10 times more books than me, and this is meant to be my profession, right? So he read like 100 books in 2017 or more. And so when someone asked him, well, how often do you spend reading? He goes, well, I only spend 2 to 3 hours a day reading. You would think someone who finished a book every 3 days, like 8 hours a day reading. But the thing is consistency. He does it every day. I don't think he misses a day. If he's watching this, he can correct me. All right? I don't think he's missing a day, but that's the thing. So you read, even if it's half an hour a day, even if it's an hour a day, that's going to add up, right? So if you burn after doing 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day, that's not going to happen. That being said, you can benefit from a lie-in once every few weeks. It's like almost your recharge day. But I don't buy this. 2 days of rest for every 5 days of work. Like what's that? 30% of your life needs to be rest. I don't think so. So I mentioned, when people ask me about productivity, it's like, well, there's levels of productivity. So the first level is lack of productivity. Basically you're unproductive. You're not doing anything. You're always waking up late. You're always missing things. You're not doing anything. And hopefully even the people watching this are not from that category, because they wouldn't be watching this otherwise. The second level of productivity is when you're productive for a reason, which means if you're working 9 to 5, you're waking up on time every time. You're not late for work. If you're a student, you're waking up for lectures, or for exams, you've got a proper timetable and you're in the mode. Why? But you're productive for that exam. So you're waking up to revise. You're waking up to go to a lecture. There's a reason behind it. However, the problem with that is, in the absence of that reason, you are no longer productive. So if you're productive and you're waking up on time for an exam, once you've taken that exam, now you have no reason to wake up anymore. Same thing for the working man. He's working 9 to 5, so he's waking up every day at 7 o'clock, which is excellent, right? Okay. Well then, what about Saturday? Now he's having a lie-in. That means every weekend he's having a lie-in. And as you said, what, 30% of your life you're having lie-ins. That's too much. We don't need that much rest. Yeah. The third level, on the final level, is to be productive as a lifestyle. Like this, you're doing it for productivity's sake.
Yeah.
So that's for the students. I would say, if you have a lecture at 9 a.m. and the next day you have a lecture at 12 p.m., your wake-up time should be the same. You shouldn't be waking up later because your lecture's later. That means you're waking up for the lecture. No, but we want you to wake up for the sake of being productive. That means that time between 7 a.m. and 12, you could have done so many things, right? Same thing for the working man. In a weekday and a weekend, you should be waking up at the same time if you want to be a productive person.
Yeah.
If you're doing that every day, yes, every few weeks, take a lie, take a rest, recuperate, and it feels really nice to do that, and you're re-energized. When you're feeling, you know what, I'm getting too tired, okay, have a day off, do nothing and sleep. Why? Because that doesn't count as wasting time. That rest is for the purpose of productivity. Yeah. So even if the whole day you did nothing, no complaints, you're just refueling. But at what point are you refueled and now you're just topping it up, right? You've got a cup, you're filling it up, and now it's just going to spill. Now this is just waste, right? So that's what I would advise, is that, okay, don't burn out, but, day after day, 2 days a week, you're lying in and you're not doing anything. Or as a student, you're waking up late every day. Why? Because you don't have morning lectures. This is taking it too far. So you need to find that balance. Be productive. Once you feel yourself burning out, have a lie-in. A guilt-free lie-in, and that's the difference.
Let's talk about social media, because that's the day and age we're living in. Since we're talking about productivity, do you see a link? Because obviously, the stats are real, the figures are real, the amount of time being spent on consuming and social media, right? There's crazy figures out there. It's ironic because this is...
Yeah. I was going to say, any advice I give doesn't apply to your IlmFeed viewers.
Exactly.
I am not, this is the teaser. I am not responsible for any decrease in IlmFeed subscribers.
Exactly, right? So and we're going to be sharing this on social media platforms. But we know that, alhamdulillah, there's khair and there's good on social media as well. But we're linking it with productivity. So as in, is there a link between being unproductive and nowadays the social media usage and the amount of consuming that people are doing? Have you seen that?
Absolutely, man. And this is an epidemic. This is a huge issue for myself. Lately, past few weeks, I've been going through a slump, and my productivity is just, I've not been following the advice I've been given today, and so I keep telling myself, you need to get back on it. And a big reason for that is social media, and that's an issue for academia as well, because you have so much control over your own time. Yeah. When you're at work and you're busy, you can't check social media. But as a student and also as an academic, you can be just researching, then you swipe to the right, and now you're on Facebook, and then you're scrolling, and you get a notification, and it's really a disaster for productivity. And so we come back to the word compartmentalization. You don't just compartmentalize the day, you compartmentalize the hour. You segment that hour. So what I say to people is, I say, okay, this is in the context of students. My audience was a student audience. What I said to them was, you're revising, yeah? Take an hour. And from that hour, I want 45 minutes, turn everything off. Put your phone in another room. Just turn it off for 45 minutes, read, and do proper work. Then, 15 minutes, guilt-free. Social media, go out, go to the bathroom, have a coffee, talk to your friends on the phone, do whatever you want for 15 minutes. And then you might think, well, 15 minutes, was that a quarter of the hour, a quarter of the day you're wasting? That's fine. Because actually, if you're spending hour after hour not following this formula, just you're spending an hour after hour revising, but in between that revision, you've got notification here, you got WhatsApp, you got Facebook, you got Instagram, you got... But you know what? I'm exposing my age because I'm talking about Facebook and WhatsApp, but I guess these days I should be saying Snapchat and Instagram. Yeah, that's what they're using right now. I don't use Facebook. I'm not old. That was the first time I realized that I'm getting old. The first time I ever thought that I'm getting old is when someone said, Facebook. No, I don't use Facebook. I don't know. Times are changing. Anyway, when you're working hour after hour, but these things are being interrupted with social media, you can work for 4 hours. But from that 4 hours, I can guarantee that more than a quarter of it was spent on social media, on whether it is Reddit or anything else, getting distracted. So I say yes, it needs some discipline, but you have to compartmentalize. So spend 45 minutes with no distractions, then 15 minutes, go on Facebook, do what you want, then 45 minutes, then 15 minutes. So actually, I'm advising that from the day, that's what, if you add it up, that's like 2-3 hours or more that you're on social media, but you've spent a good 6 hours in return doing really productive things. So social media itself is not so bad, but the problem is when it consumes you and it consumes your productivity, you need some organization to it, you need some discipline to it. And as soon as you let go of that discipline, that routine, that organization, it's going to come to bite you, and it's currently biting me now. So, for me, Facebook is if I don't complete the PhD, it's because of Facebook. That's the problem. Yeah.
You might as well put it in your acknowledgement as well,
Yeah.
Facebook.
I would like to thank my advisors. And I would also like to thank Facebook for extending this PhD for another year.
But yeah, on my personal phone, what I've started doing is I've just put it on mute whilst I'm working. That way, I know like there's less of a chance that I'm going to look at my phone and check it. That's one thing, and it's interesting because we had Sheikh Sajid for the first podcast, Sajid Omar, and he said like every now and again have cave days, he calls it, cave day, where basically you switch off from everything and even everyone, like you just go into hibernation mode and just focus on yourself kind of thing. So I thought that was really powerful actually, just having some time to yourself, because like even me, like people say like the best like ideas are thought of in the shower, but you know what, like that's a good thing, man, like because it's time to yourself, you're thinking. I think that's what people aren't doing nowadays. They're not like, creativity is being killed because of social media. That's what I think personally. So be it like I'm into creative writing myself, but the more I'm consuming social media and the more I'm not spending time with myself, the more I'm finding that I'm actually like not producing much writing now, and I'm not thinking, and I'm not coming up with ideas, as opposed to, for example, I'm on a long journey and I'm by myself, I'm driving, got a 4-hour drive. In that 4-hour drive, I've realised, obviously I'm doing it because I have to get from A to B, but I've realised I actually come up with really good ideas, and I'm thinking and I'm reflecting because I'm by myself. So do you think it's good to also be by yourself sometimes and just have that time to yourself?
Yeah, you mentioned two things. So the first thing was the more practical advice of putting things on silent and knowing your weaknesses and acknowledging them and introspecting is a very wise thing and a very respectable thing. So someone knows that, look, when I see that little red circle, I can't hesitate, but just I can't refrain from just going and doing it. Okay, then people use apps that block you from social media once you've passed a certain threshold. So you can do it yourself, but you say, for example, 3 hours. After 3 hours, you literally have no access to that app. Or like you say, you put it on silent. I know someone who when he gets home, he keeps his phone in his car, and then he has a second brick phone that if anyone needs to call him for important things. But as for his smartphone, once he gets home, that's a really respectable thing. He might be seen as weak or something, or you can't even refrain from. Actually, no, he acknowledges his weakness and he's working around that, and so he gets my respect, and so that that's a. And basically what you've implemented is that compartmentalization that I said, is that for some period of time you go on complete shutdown. So that's definitely advisable. As for the second thing you mentioned was that cutting off entirely from a different perspective, not from a productivity perspective per se, but just from like a self connection, that kind of thing. Absolutely, you mentioned podcasts, hashtag IlmFeed podcast, and podcasts are an excellent thing to fill up your day with productivity, right? And for those people who are really not doing any productive thing and just whether either going on social media or playing games and watching films, a step up podcast is a huge step up from that. Although I watched a video once, and he's one of these famous channels, although I've forgotten the name. But he mentioned, actually, like, you know, he was mentioning like podcast overkill.
Okay.
It's similar to what you said, is that he said that, you know, technology now is biting us by being waterproof, because now people are listening to podcasts in the shower. And as you rightly said, is that most of your ideas come in the shower. Now, why do most of your ideas come in the shower? Because that's one of the only times where you don't have access to technology. And almost now we're breaking down that barrier. We're giving ourselves access to technology, even in the shower, because everything's waterproof now. So you're in the shower and you listen to a podcast. But actually, give yourself that room to breathe. Give yourself that room for creativity. With Bill Gates, actually, there's another video where Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, they've known each other for a long time. And Bill Gates said that Warren said to him, like, why are you so big? Why? Like, he looked at his timetable and Bill Gates was filling it up completely, and he goes, why is this so full? Yeah, this is not a good thing. You need to book time in your timetable for thinking. Yeah, and so as a CEO of a business, like, Bill Gates is the most important person in Microsoft. He's the most important person in his company. So his thinking time is more valuable than other people's thinking time. So for him to think for an hour is more valuable for Microsoft than for him to code something for an hour or have a meeting. And someone else can have that meeting, someone else can code. But if he's thinking of ideas, so as you basically, I'm reiterating what you said, it's actually your time to yourself to think. And now if you want to talk about it from an akhirah perspective, is contemplation, tadabbur, actual thinking. And you know, sometimes I think, like, I'm in love with the moon. That's my thing. Like, I look at the moon, I think, subhanallah, like, this is enough for me. For any evidence, I'm looking at the moon, I think, Allahu Akbar, right? But how many opportunities do I get to look at the moon? And I think sometimes to a time before electricity, a time before technology, and how easy it was for people to believe in a God, right? Even if they've not heard of the message of Islam. We talk about fitrah, we talk about tawheed, like the natural disposition to believe in a God. And they say, you know, I don't know how credible the experiment is, but they say, you know, I read an article once where they said if you put like some newborn babies on an island, and they would just like kind of somehow raise themselves, they would believe in a God. They wouldn't know how to pray, but they'll believe in it. Like, it's a natural thing to believe in a deity.
Greater power.
Yeah.
Greater being.
Yeah, something. Yeah, exactly. And I make that link in my head. Sometimes I said, you know what? Imagine a farmer who's just got Allah's creation all around him, and he looks up and there's no light pollution, which is such a huge deal. Like, we talk about pollution, but light pollution, there were no lights, and he's looking up and he can see thousands of stars. Does he have a choice except to say Allahu Akbar? Like, look at this, you know. In one of the retreats that we went to in Spain, it was like a campus, Spain, like a few hours away from any city, and then you take another half an hour drive, almost like the top of a hill, and it's one of the cleanest air spaces in the whole of Europe, in terms of light pollution. And wallah, you take a look up, and there are thousands of stars, and you're just thinking like, wow, this is just unbelievable. And then there's almost like, it's not a telescope, but there's like I don't know if it is a telescope or something similar, but you look through it and you can see the ridges on the moon.
Really? Wow.
So you're looking through and you see the ridges on the moon, and you're just thinking, Allahu Akbar, yeah? How easy it is for him to believe, and how hard it is for us. Why? Because we don't look up. We don't look up. First of all, we're looking down at our phone, yeah? But even if we're not looking down at our phones, we're looking ahead. We're looking at the building which is blocking the moon. This is why I have never been impressed with like, obviously architecture is an impressive field, but I mean like tall buildings. When someone says, oh, you know, they built the tallest building in the world, I'm really not, I don't care. Like, because when I look away from it and I see the thing behind it, I see those stars, I see the moon, I see the sunset, I'm thinking, subhanAllah, this is not comparable. So it's similar to what you said about connecting with yourself. And what Sheikh Sajid said was like, he'll just have a cave day. It's for this in a similar light. If we just make an effort, and it's really hard because we get so distracted. If we make an effort just to look up, and you look at the stars past the buildings, that it in a similar way allows you to reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the same way having an alone time, because basically it's the absence of modernity, the absence of technology. You're just left with nature, and this is an inherently religious thing, nature, because it's like a unadulterated creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So definitely I think that that and look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Day after day for weeks and months he went to the cave of Hira.
Exactly.
Yeah, and he's yearning how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's never been committed to idolatry. He's always had that tawheed. He's always had that yearning, and he's saying to Allah, allow me to worship you, and he doesn't know how to worship. So, and Shaykh Akram always mentions that the verse Iqra, the first verse in the Quran, Iqra, it means read. Doesn't mean read a book, seek knowledge, although seeking knowledge is a very virtuous thing. What does read mean? Basically, whenever a portion of something comes in the Quran, it usually means the entire thing. So in the Quran, when it says qum, stand, qum al-layl, stand in the night, it means stand in the night in prayer. Or sujood, or ruku', irka', usjud, these kind of things, it means pray. It means do sujood, not random sujood, it means do sujood in the prayer. So iqra al-Quran fi salah. So read what? Read the Quran. How? In the prayer. So actually iqra means pray. The Prophet ﷺ is going day after day, almost saying to Allah, teach me how to pray. So Allah saying, iqra.
A key component, basically.
Yeah, basically saying, pray. And obviously, like you say, the main component of the prayer is reading the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ didn't even read anyway, so how would it make sense to say read, So sometimes we use this ayah to say we should seek knowledge. Indirectly, yes, that's the benefit of it. But the Prophet ﷺ was only able to attain that through that seclusion by going to Cave Hira. Imagine he's trading day after day. If that was the equivalent of the grind that we're going through now, that's their grind. Imagine he was just in the market day after day. Does he have the time or the space or the capacity to beg Allah for that clarity and guidance? No. So I think what the Sheikh said is extremely important.
Coming to the end of the discussion now, but I think one important thing to do is to basically, like everything that we've discussed, whether it's the morning routine or whether it's the self-motivation and doing all of these things and being productive, obviously for us as Muslims there's a greater purpose, right? It's not just so we feel good, or we can work out and we're in good shape, or we're earning more, we're getting good grades and everything else, but actually all of this we can now combine into both for dunya and for deen as well, and we can better ourselves, whether it's mentally, physically, but most importantly spiritually, and that will enable us to actually come closer to Allah. So I think that's a really important note to end off on, because especially we mentioned the Prophet and some of his practices, but let's end off on that note as to how we can now just bring all of that together and now become a better Muslim. And like we said, we don't have to be a scholar. Like, the people that are listening and watching, you don't have to be scholars, you don't have to be students of knowledge, but you could just be doing a 9 to 5. You could be a businessman or woman. But how do we incorporate all of that into
Yeah, I was discussing with my friends a couple of weeks ago. We were having this conversation about working life, and alhamdulillah, they're all qualified and they're all working quite hard, and one of them said like you said, I'm discontent with just working so hard for what reason, right? And then someone else said, well, actually, the Sahaba, they worked longer hours than us, So it's not just necessarily about, like you say, just seeking knowledge and ibadah. Actually, work is ibadah and this kind of thing, right? And what that made me think was, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between us and the Sahaba, who rightly so are working longer hours, from sunrise to sunset, and they're working so many hours, like they don't have weekends. The sheep don't stop running around just because it's Saturday. They'll be doing that day after day, right? And then that made me think, what? It's the inherent connection back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we say, it almost becomes a cliche now, we say working is ibadah also. Family life is ibadah also. Everything's ibadah if you have the right intention. And that's what we say, but it's almost just a catchphrase now. But are we internalizing that? Abu al-Hasan Nadwi, rahimahullah, he said this more than 50 years ago, and it applies more today, and he said, the problem with Muslims today is not bad intentions.
Mm.
The problem with Muslims is no intention. So even if we eat with the right hand, it's not because it's sunnah. We just eat with the right hand because our mum taught us to eat with our hand. So are we getting reward for that? Allahu A'lam. Are we connecting that back to Allah? So not everyone has to be a scholar, not everyone has to be a student of knowledge, not everyone has to memorize the entire Quran or anything like this. But the key is, are we connecting everything consciously and inherently back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is our day a Allah-centric, religion-centric thing? So the Sahaba who worked longer hours than we do, however, they would pray every prayer in the masjid if they were able to, if it was in the vicinity. So obviously if you're working, you have a masjid nearby.
Yeah.
But are you making that effort? Are you trying to do jama'ah with your colleagues? Are you trying? Basically they were conscious of God throughout the whole day, but they had to, notwithstanding their God consciousness, they had to work. Whereas we are working all day, and notwithstanding our work, we have to think of Allah. Like sometimes we have to make an active effort. Okay, let me spend half an hour thinking about Allah.
Yeah.
They would be thinking about Allah the whole day. While they're working, for example, if they had a farm, they'll be doing dhikr while they're doing each thing, right? Or if they're trading, they would be trading ethically only because Allah instructed them to. Then as soon as they hear the adhan, they would stop what they're doing then. They would go pray jama'ah. In the morning, before work starts, they're spending an hour doing dhikr. When they go home, the sunnah, as praying the congregation prayer, the jama'ah, it's sunnah to do that in the mosque. However, the sunnah prayers is sunnah to pray sunnah at home. So the Sahaba, they would pray sunnah at home, then they would go to the mosque, then they would go home. So the Prophet ﷺ said, don't make your homes graves. Yeah, because you're only praying in the mosque and you're not doing anything at home. I think that's the key difference. So if we want to close, we can close on to say that, not just as a cliche, not just as a catchphrase, but let's make an active effort to have our life revolve around, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rather than using the deen to revolve around. So it's not like saying, how can I fit my prayers during the day? No, have those prayers in the day. How can I fit my work around the prayer? How can I fit my studies around the prayer? And then you'll see, you'll view life in a new light.
You know what? Really good tips, and honestly, I've really enjoyed.
Oh, likewise.
Conversation.
Pleasure.
We've covered a
We
lot.
should do round 2, inshallah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Inshallah, the next time we invite you, Dr. Salah. Inshallah. Honestly,
Inshallah.
Thank you so much for your time, and
Barakallahu
we wish you all the best in your studies and everything else that you're doing. And Allah bless you. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm sure our IlmFeed viewers and listeners would appreciate this episode, inshallah, and hopefully you benefited. Of course, do keep in mind as well, a lot of things we discussed, we're not giving expert advice. Definitely, do check these things up. And like Brother Salah kept mentioning that, you need to, of course, reapply it to yourselves. So, anything that we might have mentioned, it's applicable to ourselves. But I think for yourselves, inshallah, go away and really think about these things. And think about, whether you're a student or you're working or you have a business or whatever it might be. Really see how you can, inshallah, use these general tips to bring into your own lives and become more productive. And ultimately, we said, to become more focused on Allah and the deen, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Thank you again so much for tuning in and for listening to this amazing podcast. Definitely, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Continue spreading the word and sharing the podcast. And inshallah, until next time, from myself, Shabbir, your host, from Brother Salah and the rest of the IlmFeed team, we'll see you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.